next comment or question comes from Sean C. in response to Dear Korg, a video I did in January 2022. And Sean writes, Dear Korg Corporation, we've been way out of touch. Things have been crazy. And it sucks that we don't talk that much. But I should tell you that I think of you each night. I twist my Kronos' potentiometers and start singing with delight. Why would you write that? I love my OASYS, but each day is another fight. If I stop playing drums, then everything might be alright. Playing drums, just fix it. If I stop playing keyboards. If I stop reading reverb, okay. Then everything might be alright. I'll take your advice. It'll turn around, wait and see. 'Cause all that, it takes a little reinventation. It's easier to change if you give it your attention. All you got to do is just believe you can be who you want to be. I think that's keyboard player poetry. But I have to be honest and say I don't think I've ever been a muse. But thank you for the feedback and the lyrics to a song. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. So the next question comes from Jeff K777. And it's in response to the Death of the Kronos video, a video I did in December 2021. And Jeff writes, frankly, I've been waiting a couple of years for the Kronos to die, as it's clearly long overdue a major refresh and update. I was gobsmacked when the Nautilus came out because it was worse than the Kronos, almost in every way except for a few new samples, and didn't address any of the major issues that needed updating. And it wasn't even that much cheaper. The Kronos is basically a collection of 9 VSTs, a sample app and a DAW running on a standard OS and CPU, but on custom hardware. Well, it's not that custom. The motherboard is exactly the same as a computer motherboard. But, in other words, basically a computerized music system, but in a single customized box. Unfortunately, it's had its 10-year-old Atom CPU, which is horribly slow, which is why it takes so bloody long, and I apologise for the language, to boot. Because Korg wrote the software to integrate all of these different packages, they smoothed over the fact that you're running a bunch of different applications on a computer and it feels more or less like a single unit. But ultimately, that's what it is. And the samples are feeling old compared to the montage now, although it still holds up against Roland's Zencore library. It's pointless to complain that the Phantom is also a software-based system. All the digital synths are software-based, and the trend is increasingly to use standard components and software. Moreover, as manufacturers introduce VSTs online libraries, it makes sense to integrate these with your hardware synths and allow them to run natively. So the Kronos started a trend, but that trend is never going to be limited to it. What is most interesting to me is that the Kronos is really the last major workstation. In it tries to do everything, full DAW and sampler as well as synth. Montage and, to a lesser extent, Phantom assume that you just use your computer for many of the non-sound performance functions. Honestly, that makes sense to me. And the fact that Kronos can do all of this is more of an anachronism than a legitimate advantage in my book. I'd be very interested to see what Kronos replacement looks like. I rarely use my Kronos 2, as I find I just prefer the sound interface and workflow of my other keyboards at the moment. but a replacement could definitely change that view. That was a very interesting... I kind of agree and disagree with some of what you've said. Like you, I've been expecting a Korg to discontinue the Kronos actually for a period of time. Probably a couple of years before they actually did. I mean, it's kind of made 10 years. And hoping that it carried on until a new flagship synthesizer arrived. Now, I think whatever was in the works, to be honest, has basically been scuppered by COVID and now the sort of global supply chain issues. And I've said this many times in response to both question and answers and actually in other videos on the channel. The computer that runs the Kronos is indeed getting very long in the tooth. And I was reading a blog the other day written by an engineer who was trying to upgrade the board and port the software. Made a very interesting read, actually, very, very interesting read. But he hasn't done it to date. But there is another engineer, I was watching his videos on YouTube, and I can't for the life of me think of what his name is now. But he's just basically bought a development environment, and he's going to port everything to a brand new motherboard. Now, in terms of the motherboard inside the Kronos, I mean, they could have moved the motherboard up. The problem is that the Kronos is not designed to run, nor is the Nautilus, funny that, a 64-bit operating system. It runs a 32-bit operating system. And as it currently stands, that kind of limits you in terms of the motherboards that you can buy to put inside it. That may be one of the considerations while it's running the hardware that it's currently running. But I think Korg do need to sort of move into the 64-bit arena. Not only does it expand the capabilities in terms of processing power and memory and throughput, because you're transferring 64 bits at any given structure for any given instruction rather than 32 bits for any given instruction. And I think that's an 8-fold increase in performance, if I remember correctly. But all the other competitors are basically moving towards this sort of 64-bit. A lot of them are not there yet, and definitely a lot of the embedded Linux type stuff is nowhere near 64-bit for a number of these machines that are being launched. But we shall see what happens. Great comments, great insight. Thank you for the comment.